this is our cash game strategy segment where we're looking at like who are the main cash game targets. We'll touch on some high price guys, and then we'll touch on some lower price guys or some values as well. Let's kick things off with high price cash game options. I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say Davante Adams should be in our cash game lineups again, regardless of the matchup or anything else. The massive target share, the ridiculous. We've only seen really one down week from him all year. I don't know. I mean, am I crazy here to just say put Adams in now and not have to worry about not having those 40 DK points come the end of the slate?
Listen, he's the only wide receiver that I would really pay up for in cash this week.
Right.
So I think your strategy is either Davante Adams and, fill it in with some low priced wide receivers, or just take a bunch from that, mid like 5,000, 6,000 tier. But yep. I'm not going to put Tyreek in my cash game. I'm not going to put Mike Williams in my cash game. Justin Jefferson against Carolina is not one I really like in a cash game. I think the only other option for me if we're paying up and it's, $12,000 cheaper than Adams is DeAndre Hopkins against the Browns secondary, which we talked about being suspect. But that target ceiling is not great. So I think I'm going Davante Adams, or maybe saving $2,000 and going Terry McLaurin against the Chiefs.
That's
would be my top cash game wide receivers.
I'm with you there. I think the argument for Adams, and sometimes you pay up for him and he doesn't get there. It's just the possibility from not getting there is similar to it's becoming like a Derrick Henry situation where there's just so many high value opportunities, so many red zone targets, such a high target floor that you're just really taking a huge risk in not playing him because we're seeing him be optimal, way off and more often than he's not. And regardless of the game flow and all these other things, where he's becoming kind of game flow, game script independent because he's just commanding such a massive target share. And so, it's similar to like a Henry where it's like, if the guy's getting 30 carries and almost every goal line carry, you're playing him. If Davante Adams is going to get 10 targets or 10 to 12 targets and likely 3 or 4 red zone targets, you just have to play him. Right?
Yep. Agreed.
Good. We're on the same page there. All right. Well, let's talk about a different position then. At quarterback, I'm following my format. It's tempting to want to pay up for a guy like Mahomes or Kyler, but I do think you can drop down into more of. You don't have to go bargain basement, but there's some of these mid-tier options like a Matthew Stafford, which is a little risky, I guess, if you think they're going to get ahead. We already mentioned Heineke. The guy I want to throw out there too would be Joe Burrow, who's been really good this year. I don't know how are you approaching maybe quarterbacks and cash? I just don't know where we're going to find the cap for Mahomes or Kyler if we're paying for Adams and a couple good backs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would love to fit Mahomes or Kyler in. I would try to do it. I do think that's going to limit me a little bit other places. But again, we don't have Derrick Henry on this slate. So we don't have one of the big salary eaters at another position. So it's possible that if you didn't go with Davante Adams and you decided to pay down at wide receiver, then you could probably afford a Mahomes or a Kyler Murray. For me, there I'm going to go with Kyler Murray over those two. It saves me a little bit. I also like the rushing floor, which we didn't see against San Francisco. But I think that we could still see it against this Cleveland team. I also, if you're going to save a little bit, I really like Justin Herbert against the Ravens. Carson Wentz threw for over 400 yards against them, and it's Carson Wentz. So right. I feel really confident that Justin Herbert, who just came off torching the Browns, can also put up a pretty high score against the Ravens. So I think that I would actually probably lean Justin Herbert and take the $1,000 savings on DraftKings over Patrick Mahomes. So that would be my thought if we're going to pay up. And then, we can talk later about some pay down options. But that'd be where I'm going.
I mean, we didn't even mention Lamar Jackson, who just had the game of his life on Monday night, and who's only 100 more than. I mean, if you want to play Lamar Jackson in cash, I don't blame you. I just have a formula that I follow, and if I can play Taylor Heineke for 58 or 5,900 and save 2,500 there, I'm probably going to do it. But I won't fault anyone for playing especially the fact that we do have a bunch of dual threat guys this week. We didn't have them last week on the main slate, but the fact that we have Kyler, Mahomes, Jackson, you do take a risk in not playing one of them that your quarterback puts up 15 and they all put up 25.
Right.
There's a risk.
And I do want to caution people against Lamar. I think it's still a strong play. Like, I wouldn't say don't play Lamar Jackson, but I would say don't expect 46 points again, or don't expect 37 points like he got against the Chiefs. This Chargers defense is schemed in a way that prevents deep passes. Right. That's why they're so bad against the run, because they basically will say, if you want to run it up the gut over and over and over again, fine, do that. But Brandon Staley, from when he was at the Rams, schemes his defense to do two things. One, take away the RPO, which is important with Lamar Jackson.
Right.
And two, take away those deep passes. They make you kind of dink and dunk them all the way down the field, which again is why we talked about the Browns were a terrible matchup for them.
Yep.
In the 4 weeks before this explosion against the Colts, Lamar Jackson had one passing touchdown, each in all of those games. So I think you could get a solid Lamar game, but I think you might be looking at like 24, 25, 26 points as opposed to paying for some explosion. Yeah. So I would just say, if you're going to put Lamar Jackson in your lineup, I don't think you should do it expecting anything close to a blow-up game. I don't think this Chargers defense is one that's going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. And that's why maybe we could talk later about Mark Andrews. I think he's a nice fit here because he's going to work in that intermediate and short passing game. And I like him a lot for that very reason. You can't really play any Baltimore running backs because they have a committee. So if you play Lamar, you could like maybe play him naked or stack him with Andrews in some kind of, game stack over there. But anyways, let's get off quarterbacks. We talked about a high price receiver. Running back to me is really interesting for cash because there's a lot of guys I really like, and there's going to be some hard decisions here as far as whether we pay up for someone like McCaffrey if he's cleared to go, or Eckler, or if you feel comfortable playing a couple mid-tier backs because there's a couple really good ones in good spots here too. First of all, if McCaffrey is fully healthy and ready to go, do we just play him?
That's a very good question.
Because that's what we have to. Yeah, go ahead.
I would be tempted to, because they didn't ease him back in last year when he was coming off his injury and played, and then it obviously didn't work out for them, so they might ease him in this year. But he practiced last week, and he said he felt good last week, and they sat him, which to me that is them being cautious.
Right.
That's them saying, we're not going to play you until you're ready to play and be 100%. So if he's coming back this week, I'm expecting it to be him at 100%. So I wouldn't smash him in like we used to in the past. If he was coming in below 9,000 on DraftKings, we would say, oh my God, McCaffrey, you have to get him in. But he is absolutely viable in cash game lineups. I think that you should definitely have some exposure there because I think he's going to come back 100%. Obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday morning, so you should definitely keep an eye on practice reports. And then the only other guy that I think I would pay up for in cash games is Eckler. And I do think that, he's been really involved in the passing game. He's still getting, 15, 17, 18 carries a game. So, and he's getting red zone work. And we already talked about, what happened in that Baltimore-Indianapolis game. So I think that, Eckler has a pretty high floor, which you want for cash games. He's only scored, under 20 points in one game. That was in week 1 when he was battling some injuries. So, I think he's pretty safe.
Yeah. I think we want to keep it real close on, I know that there's a lot of coach speak that goes on, but I do think we want to watch what they say about McCaffrey and his workload. And if he's cleared to go at 8,800 against the Vikings, which we've seen have been a pretty suspect defense, I think you go there. If you wanted to save some money and play Eckler, I'm nervous about the matchup, weirdly enough, although we saw Baltimore's defense isn't the same, just a weird feeling playing like a back against Baltimore. But both of those, I think you're going to end up with one of those two guys in your cash lineup, probably not both of them. And then I feel like you can drop down here to a really guy I'm really comfortable playing, Darrell Henderson Jr. at 6,000 in a elite matchup. We talked about it last week with Zeke, and then we watched them just destroy the Giants up front. It's, again, one of the top matchups on my board for O-line, D-line ratings. You feel okay there? Are you worried about Sony at all? Are you okay playing Henderson?
Playing Henderson. I think I read something that let me double check this real quick. That Sony Michel got pretty much all of his carries on one drive, which was when Henderson left with an arm injury. So, I'm totally comfortable playing Henderson. I think it's a great matchup for him. I think they're going to kind of run away with that. We want running backs in a positive game script. I also really think that Joe Mixon is cash game viable against a pretty bad Detroit run defense. He came and had 10 carries last week despite an ankle sprain, and now Samaje Perine is on the COVID IL, and it was a positive test, which means he needs to go through the whole protocol to get back. So I think you're looking at Perine probably not being active this weekend. If Mixon was healthy enough to play last week and got through the game, I expect him to, to be active this whole game. And then we talked about it in the stacks portion. But at 6,300, I would play DeAndre Swift also in cash games. I think that, Swift is going to have a pretty high floor as well.
All right. So, we're in agreement about Darrell Henderson, and we talked a little bit about some of the other decent mid-tier backs. DeAndre Swift, we already mentioned on the show. I mean, there's Damian Williams we could maybe go to. There's a number of guys here in that range that maybe you could use as your RB2 or in a flex spot. As far as values goes, is there anybody like we can get in the cash game lineups down here around, I would say 5K or under on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think you can go to Darrell Williams. I don't think there's massive upside there, but we're talking cash game, and he is going to be the main running back in Kansas City in a game that they could or should win. So I think you could go there. At wide receiver, we skipped over some value plays, but I think Kadarius Toney, keep an eye on Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. They both practiced last week, so they could be back. If one or none of them are back, I love Toney at 5,600. I also really like Jacoby Myers at 5,500. I think New England's going to have to pass a lot against Dallas. For the same reason, I like Hunter Renfrow at 4,900. He has a pretty safe cash floor against the Broncos. And then the last cash game play I would say is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Quintez Cephas is out for the year, and St. Brown has had 8 targets in back-to-back games for the Lions. If we think the Bengals offense is going to do well, I think that St. Brown is a solid floor play at $4,200 for in cash games.
Yeah, I mean, all those guys are definitely in consideration. I'm having a hard time feeling great about anybody like under 5K right now, but I'm sure we're going to get that at some point. A lot of the guys you mentioned are definitely on my radar, and I think that 5 to 6K range is loaded with some good targets in there. But we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the Toney situation. You and I talked pre-show, like who's coming back with injuries, who's not. That's a wait and see. The value will pop up, even though there's not a ton of obvious value here. I think it will, like it did last week with Toney. It'll make itself clear, and we'll be able to focus and hone in on that.